So how does a real estate tycoon and reality TV star become president, lose, and then stage a comeback that's pretty much unprecedented to do it all over again? That's what we're going to dive into. This is the story of Donald Trump, a figure who didn't just win elections, he completely changed the political landscape.
You're fired. I mean, that single phrase delivered week after week on national TV, it made Donald Trump an icon, a symbol of decisive success. But how in the world did that exact same persona help pave the way to the presidency not just once, but twice? That's the real question we're digging into today.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll track his journey in 6 parts. First, how he built his brand. Then, we'll get into his shocking 2016 victory and what he did as president. After that, we cover his defeat and historic comeback, take a look at his current second term, and finally, we'll analyze his lasting impact on politics itself.
Okay, so to really get the political figure, you've got to go back to the beginning. See, before all the politics, there was the brand. And as you're about to see, this was no accident. It was a deliberate strategy that he started building decades ago.
So his journey really kicks off in 1971 when he joins his father's real estate company. But right from the start, his ambition was way bigger than the outer boroughs of New York. The flashy Trump Tower in '83, that really cemented his image as a Manhattan power player. But the real game changer, that was 2004 when The Apprentice premiered. That show didn't just make him famous, it turned him into a national icon.
And what's so fascinating is just how different his strategy was from his father's. Think about it. Fred Trump built a solid, steady, low-risk business on middle-class housing. Donald, he went the complete opposite way. He chased these huge, high-profile, high-risk luxury projects, all fueled by massive debt. But here's the key difference. For Donald, the media attention was just as valuable as the building itself. The whole point was to make the name Trump mean success.
And wow, did that strategy pay off? The source material actually says that The Apprentice was arguably his most successful business venture ever. It completely rebranded him. He wasn't just some controversial New York developer with a history of bankruptcies anymore. Suddenly, he was America's boss, and he was building this massive fan base that, well, would become the bedrock of his political base.
So, how did this TV personality actually translate into real political power? Well, that brings us to his absolutely improbable first run for the presidency. A campaign that would leave the entire political establishment completely stunned.
He burst onto the scene with this incredibly simple but powerful slogan, "Make America Great Again." It was pure populism, an anti-establishment message that took direct aim at 3 specific targets: what he called unfair global trade deals, illegal immigration, and a media that he just relentlessly attacked as biased.
But why did that message hit home so hard? Well, the source material explains that it tapped directly into this deep well of economic anxiety and cultural resentment felt by millions of voters, especially in the working class, who felt like both parties had totally forgotten about them. And the result? One of the greatest political upsets in modern American history. Period.
Okay, so he actually wins. Now what? Let's break down what he actually did in office, the key policies and consequences of his first term as the 45th president.
This table gives us a really nice, clean snapshot. On the economy, he delivered big tax cuts and rolled back regulations. That led to strong growth, but it also pushed up the national debt. In foreign policy, his America First approach meant pulling out of major international agreements, like the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal, which definitely strained relationships with allies. And crucially for his supporters, he appointed 3 conservative justices to the Supreme Court for life.
And you know that last point about the courts? That's arguably his most lasting legacy from his first term. Those 3 appointments locked in a solid 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court. We're talking about a generational shift with huge consequences, like the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the decision that had guaranteed abortion rights for almost 50 years. The effects of that will be felt for decades. You know, for most presidents, losing an election is, well, it's the end of the story. But this story is different. Not even close. Let's look at the dramatic and frankly unprecedented period that followed his 2020 election loss.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It maps out a political comeback that is just extraordinary. After losing to Joe Biden in 2020, he refused to concede, a stance that ultimately led to the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. But instead of fading away, he actually tightened his grip on the Republican Party, which set the stage for a stunning victory in 2024 and a return to the White House.
Now, at the heart of this whole period was something that came to be known as the big lie. The source defines this as the term for the persistent false claims that the 2020 election was stolen through widespread voter fraud.
These claims directly fueled the events of January 6th and led to his second impeachment, this time for incitement of insurrection.
His victory in 2024 put him in some extremely rare company. It actually made him only the second president in all of U.S. history to win 2 non-consecutive terms. That hadn't been done since Grover Cleveland, way back in the 1800s. An absolutely historic comeback, no matter how you look at it.
All right, so that brings us right up to the present day of our story, November 2025. Now that he's back in the Oval Office as the 47th president, what's his focus?
Well, his administration is moving fast on a few fronts. For starters, he's reversing environmental rules from the Biden era and tightening security at immigration services. On the economic front, the focus is squarely on tariffs and one-on-one trade deals, and we've already seen a new agreement struck with China. These are all moves that directly follow through on his America First campaign promises. But the political climate is still as polarized as ever. This chart is really telling. On one hand, you see he won a record high level of support from Latino voters in the 2024 election. But on the other hand, the source data shows his approval with that same group has dropped significantly in the months since. It suggests his new policies are creating some new challenges within his own coalition.
Okay, for our final section, let's zoom out a bit. Beyond any single policy or any one election, what is the bigger, lasting impact of Donald Trump on how politics works in America?
What the source material argues is that he didn't just win, he literally wrote a new playbook for populist leaders. Step 1, you use social media and massive rallies to completely bypass the traditional media and speak right to your base. Step 2, you constantly challenge the legitimacy of core institutions, elections, the courts, intelligence agencies. And Step 3, you frame every single debate as a battle between patriotic populists and so-called out-of-touch globalists.
So at the end of the day, here's the crucial takeaway from all this. Donald Trump didn't just play the game of politics. He fundamentally changed the rules. His entire career has been a challenge to the established norms and institutions. And as we've shown here, that leaves us with one huge question. Can the game he changed ever really be changed back?